Hi everyone and welcome to the tutorial. Today I'll be demonstrating how to make a bubble. In a previous video I demonstrated how to work a popcorn stitch, which is sort of like a bubble that's worked over 2 rows, but the bubble I'll be showing you today is worked over just 1 row. Generally your written instructions for this technique will ask you to work to your bobble stitch and then it will say make bubble. It'll then say to knit 1, purl 1, knit 1 all into the same stitch, so that you increase to 3 stitches from just 1 stitch. You then turn your work a few times and work just those 3 stitches by themselves. And then you turn your work back to the right side and decrease those 3 stitches back down to 1 to maintain your existing stitch counts. I really like adding bubbles to my work because they have a lovely texture and a very cute effect. So let's see what all of that looks like. I'm going to work to where my pattern says to put my bobble in. So we'll just pretend that it's here, and now my pattern says to make a bubble. So we're going to knit this next stitch just as normal. So insert your right hand needle, wrap your working yarn around and draw a loop through, but we're not going to slip this work stitch from our left hand needle just yet. So we have our work stitch still attached to the needle here, and we have a new stitch now on our right hand needle. I'm now going to purl into this stitch. So I bring my working yarn to the front, insert the right hand needle into the front loop of the stitch, just as you would normally to purl, wrap the working yarn around the right hand needle and draw the loop through, so that now we have 2 stitches on our right hand needle and we still have our work stitch on the left hand needle. I'm not going to slip it off yet. I'm now going to knit it again. So the working yarn is at the back of our work, insert the right hand needle, knitwise, wrap the working yarn around, draw a loop through, and now I'm going to slip this work stitch from the needle. So you'll see I now have 3 stitches from my 1 original stitch. Your pattern might ask you to work a slightly larger bubble than what I'm doing today. I'm just doing a 3 stitch one, but there are 4, 5, 6, 7 stitch bubbles. And all that means is that it will ask you to knit and purl into that same stitch another couple of times. So it might be a knit, a purl, a knit, and then another purl and another knit. That'll just make a larger bubble than the one we're doing. So I'm now going to turn my work and I'm going to work across those 3 stitches only, and I'm going to knit them. So working out at the back, and just as normal, we're going to knit 1, 2 and 3. I'm then going to turn my work again and I'm going to purl those 3 stitches. So working out at the front, and just as normal, purl 1, 2 and 3, and I'm going to turn my work one more time and knit those 3 stitches. Your instructions might ask you to keep turning your work and working those stitches another few more times than what we're doing. Once again, this will just make a larger bubble than what I'm doing. So knit 3, knit 1, 2, 3. And now we turn back to our right side. It's now time to decrease those 3 stitches back down to just 1 stitch so that we maintain our original stitch counts for the pattern. And what I'm going to do to decrease is work a slip 1, knit 2 together, pass slip stitch over. So I'm going to slip this stitch purlwise from my left to right hand needle, just because it'll put a little bit of a twist into this stitch. Knit the next 2 stitches together, so insert my right hand needle through both stitches simultaneously. Wrap the working yarn around the needle and draw both loops over to decrease those 2 stitches down to 1. And then I'm going to pass the furthest stitch from the tip of the needle over the closest stitch to the tip of the needle. So I'm going to insert my left hand needle tip into that stitch. Let's get in focus, there we go. And pass the stitch over. And now we have 1 stitch again, and you'll see our bubble has taken shape. We'll do that one more time. So I'll just knit the next stitches as normal, just as your pattern asks you to. And as I work this stitch that's closest to my bubble, I like to just pull the yarn a little bit tighter than normal, just to make sure we help to close up any gaps that you might get on the sides of your bubble. So we'll knit to where I put my next bubble in, And then once again, my pattern says this is the point where I make a bubble. So we're going to knit one, purl one, knit one, all into this stitch. Do a bit faster this time. Knit, purl, knit. I'm going to turn my work and knit 3, 2, 3, turn my work and purl 3, 1, 2, 3, and turn my work and knit 3, 1, 2, 3. And then I'm going to decrease those 3 stitches down to 1 by slipping the first stitch purlwise with yarn in back, knitting the next 2 stitches together, and then passing the slip stitch over the last work stitch like so. And then I continue knitting as normal, just giving that first stitch a bit more of a tug. And there our bubbles have taken shape. So as I mentioned at the beginning, this particular bubble technique is worked just over 1 row. So we did everything that we need to do to make the bubble over our right side row. But I did just want to show you what I do on the wrong side, which is similar to how we were working the stitch adjacent to the bubble, in that I just like to tug the tension of my work a little bit tighter than normal just to help close up any gaps. So I'm just working to where my bubble is on the previous row. It's just here. So this is the stitch before it. As I work this next stitch, I'm just going to pull my working yarn a little bit tighter than normal, and particularly as I work this stitch, I'm also going to pull that yarn just a little bit tighter than normal. And then we'll just work to our second bubble, which was the first one that we made. Stitch before the bubble, bubble stitch just gets pulled a little bit tighter than normal, making sure the bubble is sitting on the right side of our work, that doesn't pop through to the wrong side. And we'll just tug that one a bit tighter than normal too, and then work to the end of our row. So inevitably you will end up with a couple of small gaps just on this side of your bubble mainly. This side is pretty well closed up. And that just happens because we've dramatically increased our fabric in this particular spot, and then we've decreased it again. So this particular bit of fabric has more height than the adjacent fabric. And so there will end up being a little bit of a gap where you just return it to being part of the rest of the fabric, but it's not something you see unless you pull your bubble aside. If the bubbles are just sitting on the front of your fabric, you can't see the hole. And that's how you make a bubble. Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed the video, please feel free to subscribe to the channel. And if you have any questions or comments, do leave them below.